On today's show, I'm going to let you know why Kawhi Leonard-less games are not going to be a problem yet again. Going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA, been a Clipper fan for 20 years, been covering the team for 5 on my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, and 3 right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you subscribe to both channels, hit the notification bell, and you can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Head on over to monarchmoney.com. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first year. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about why Kawhi Leonard-less games are not going to be a problem, what those games are going to look like. We're going to be talking about my biggest reason, Zuno, the combination of Harden and Zoo, the amount of increased depth we have, and the experience that we now have in these kind of games. So as everybody knows, Kawhi Leonard is one of the most frequently injured superstars in the league. Beyond injured, he just has a messed up knee. He came to us with that condition. He's the poster boy for load management, even though the whole league load manages now. But people get it twisted that he oftentimes doesn't want to play, and that's very rarely the case. Last season, Kawhi Leonard played 37 games because he was rehabbing from a knee procedure that he had in the summer of 2024 that kept him out of Team USA. In 2024, he played 68 games. Unfortunately, his knee started breaking down towards the end of the season, and he was clearly not 100%. In those 2 playoff games against the Dallas Mavericks in 2024. So in terms of Kawhi, he still played 68 games just a season ago. This is the first time he's heading into the offseason healthy since the 2020-2021 offseason, or like the offseason going into that season. And we made it to the conference finals that year. Now, we know that Kawhi Leonard's probably going to be load managed throughout this season, which means that we're going to have a lot of games without him. But the biggest reason why they're not going to be a problem is one of the main reasons we went out and got James Harden in the first place. Because James Harden is one of the best in NBA history when it comes to, I don't have that much talent on my team, but I'm going to make sure that we can generate a great shot every time down the floor to the point where we have a chance to win games against almost anyone on a given night. In the 2012-13 season, James Harden took a Houston Rockets team to the playoffs. That was pretty mediocre, in my opinion. Jeremy Lin, James Harden in the starting lineup. You had Terrence Jones. If I recall correctly, Trevor Ariza and then Omer Ashik. That was their team. And then he had some better teams in the following years for sure with Houston. But I think a prime example, honestly, of James Harden doing the most with a team is, it was Chandler Parsons, not Trevor Ariza. Trevor Ariza came later. Yeah, Trevor Ariza, I believe, was on the Wizards at this time. So Chandler Parsons, that was like their second leading scorer, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was. So he took that team to the playoffs. Last year was a great example of a team that James Harden took to the playoffs that nobody thought would be a playoff team, because of how many games Kawhi Leonard was going to miss, because we lost Paul George. And James Harden literally had Norman Powell looking like an all-star. Now, that's not to take away from how great Norman Powell was, but who's hitting him right in his pocket coming off of those curls? Who's finding him for a lot of these open shots? It's James Harden. So I believe strongly that, yes, Norman Powell was great, but James Harden is a huge reason why Norman Powell elevated to having the best season of his career. And he wasn't the only one who had the best season of his career last year. Ivica Zubac. We've seen Ivica Zubac partner up with Reggie Jackson, with Kawhi, with Paul George, with Westbrook in the pick and roll over these last, the years that we've had him since the middle of the 18-19 season. Lou Williams as well. Although when we think about Lou Williams as pick and roll partner, we usually think of Montrez. But James Harden is the first pick and roll god that he's played with. And now he's going to be playing with two who I'd put on the Mount Rushmore of pick and rolls alongside probably John Stockton and LeBron James, although Luka Doncic is pretty damn good as well. If you have any other names off the top of your head, please throw them in. Steve Nash. What am I saying? Yeah, it's got to be Nash. It's got to be Nash, Chris Paul, Harden, and then you can take your pick. I'd probably go with LeBron, but you could debate me on it. Now, when it comes to Zoo, Tony Parker's an underrated one too. You don't think of him as a passer, but he would just get in the lane and make the right play. Anyway, Ivica Zubac's finally had a guy with him that's consistently getting teams to go over the screen. So that means Ivica Zubac's man has to step up. With Russell Westbrook, they would go underneath the screen to force him to shoot. With Rajon Rondo, they would go underneath the screen to force him to shoot. With John Wall, they would go underneath the screen to force him to shoot. With Reggie Jackson, here and there, but Reggie just didn't have the timing, the vision, the passing of James Harden or Chris Paul or even John Wall and Russell Westbrook or Rondo. He just didn't have that. So now you're finally getting a pocket pass extraordinaire, a lob pass extraordinaire, who is just, as I said, we're talking Mount Rushmore pick and rolls. He has the pick and roll camp where he, constantly practices with the bigs on the timing, the looks that he wants to get. So I think the James Harden being who he is and Ivica Zubac being who he's become, because also I don't want to just take away from Ivica Zubac's natural development. He has gotten better every year defensively with, he used to get blocked all the time. Now he's so much better at keeping the ball up high, at using his left hand. I always talk about this on this show. He did not have a turnaround or did not have a jump hook over that right shoulder. He would always turn inside to that left shoulder for that right hand jump hook. But when teams sat on that, he didn't have a counter to that. And if you can turn over either shoulder, you're unguardable in the post. You just got to also be able to utilize some pump fakes. And there aren't that many guys in today's NBA that are as good as in the past as turning over either shoulder in the post, because post game is not emphasized and taught at youth levels. And it's a lot of it is because kids don't want to be playing back to basket. It's not attractive. It's not fun. And usually when you're telling someone to play back to basket, it's a bigger, older kid. And then everybody makes fun of them saying that you're only good because you're tall. You only back down. You don't have skill. And that's how it all begins. And you talk about what goes viral. Jokic's highlights that go viral aren't usually his post moves. They're his amazing passes. What we see is the John Morants, the Anthony Edwards. Those are the ones that, my kids like those guys, the Steph Currys of the world, the players that they like. But again, I genuinely think that people, like kids now, don't love the game the same way. I know this for a fact from the kids I coach. Of course, that's a broad statement, but it's because the way they consume the game. It's not, you don't have to watch full games as much. And I think that takes away a lot of, for people that had to grow up watching basketball by watching full games, you build a different connection to the game. Most of my kids do not watch full basketball games. The large majority of them. They come to practice, they love playing, but they don't watch full basketball games. They don't passionately support a team. Some of them do. Very few. And it's usually because their dads do it. So that's just the direction, just to give a little tidbit on the direction of sports fandom and what kids are witnessing. I mean, they're all on TikTok more than any other app. And the attention spans, my attention span's not great because of this social media garbage, but they're even worse. But anyway, point being, post game is not as emphasized. If you can turn over either shoulder, then you can be unguardable in the post. If it's a Zubac, not only has that now, but he's getting better at passing out of double teams in the post. So for me, the biggest reason why we're going to be straight is because Ivica Zubac and James Harden are a borderline, and I say borderline just because Zoo's never been an all-star, but you got James Harden, who's a god-level floor raiser, who can give you a fighter's chance. And then we don't just have James Harden. We don't just have Ivica Zubac. Coming up, going to talk about all the depth we have that's going to make up for not having Kawhi even more. And the part that I just left out, we won 50 games with Kawhi only playing 37 because of Zoo and Harden. And some might say, what about Norman Powell? We'll talk about what we're going to do in terms of replacing him coming up. I got to tell you a little something about 5-Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. You've seen those 5-hour energies at the gas station. They're not that big, but they get the job done. Because let's be honest, some days you just need a boost to stay sharp and the best version of yourself. Whether it be playing golf, whether it be going to work, have a presentation, whatever it may be, you want to have the energy to make it look like you care and that you can perform at your best. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5-hour energy shots today. All right. So another reason why the Kawhi Leonard-Less games should not be a problem for us, besides the fact that we won 50 games last year with him only playing 37, is that we have even more depth this year. Bradley Beal replacing Norman Powell. John Collins replacing, honestly, no one. He's kind of just insert, because John Collins was traded for Norman Powell, but we got the Norman Powell replacement in Beal off the buyout. So we essentially just slot John Collins in. We have Brook Lopez replacing Drew Eubanks, who wasn't even in the rotation. And we have CP3 replacing Ben Simmons. If you're not telling me that those aren't upgrades, then I don't know what to say. If you're telling me those aren't upgrades, you're delusional. We have so much depth now. And that's what I think is going to make us even more secure. Like, I genuinely believe we could be probably not a playoff team, but a definite play-in team if we didn't have Kawhi on the team at all. Maybe even a playoff team. I don't know. Because Zoo can still get better. Zoo is just getting better. And now Bradley Beal, with the Suns, he's the third option behind Booker and KD. And now he's a third option. You could argue even fourth option, but I don't know. I have a weird feeling he's going to put up more shots than Zubac because of who he is. But at the same time, I think it's just, we know Kawhi's the number one, Harden's the number two. Although I'm very curious to see how aggressive and how many shots Beal gets in games that everybody's healthy. But for the context of this episode with Kawhi Leonard being out, James Harden now has another guy that can help him create more with Beal. Because with Norm, he still is mainly working off the catch. When Harden went out of the game, our offense didn't look very good. But now Beal can handle the ball more in pick and rolls. He can create his own shot better. And on top of Beal, we have Chris Paul, who can help James Harden create shots when he's not in the game. I mean, we have the shot creation that is, that we were too reliant on James Harden for last year, even without Kawhi. Zubac, in games that Kawhi doesn't play, we need to really throw the ball down to Zoo. We need to really throw the ball down to Zoo. Because that's the biggest thing I'm afraid of, is with all this depth, are we going to not get the ball to Ivica Zubac the same way that we did in the past? We want him to still progress. Because I think for most Clipper fans would have to agree, Ivica Zubac and his journey, we don't want it as a Clipper to end with this 2027, the plan to go with the next generation after these contracts expire. We want Ivica Zubac in his prime here for the long haul past this era of Clipper basketball. At least I do. So we want to keep developing him. But yeah, Bradley Beal, CP3, John Collins. John Collins is not a guy for shot creation, but just gives us more front court depth and more options on both ends of the floor with his ability to be a, help side defender behind Ivica Zubac, knock down the three, be a lob threat, have some offensive rebounding in there. The possibilities are endless. And then, of course, Brook Lopez, he gives you that pick and pop threat that can stretch the floor, open up the game even more for James and Chris Paul. Because remember, we do have Chris Dunn as well. But, if you don't have Kawhi Leonard playing in a game, you're working with a 10-man rotation of James Harden, Bradley Beal. I would start Derrick Jones Jr. in his place, John Collins, and Zoo. You have three guys that can get you 20 on any given night. John Collins, who's a very solid role player in this league that averaged almost 20 last year, and then a point of attack defender who has helped two teams win in the last 2 years and get to the playoffs and win. So he is, I mean, the man. Derrick Jones Jr. Love that guy. But we have Derrick, John, Zoo. That's our starting five. Then off the bench, Chris Paul, Chris Dunn, Bogey. It's a little small. Nico and Brooke. I mean, that is enough depth, in my opinion, to have these games not be the biggest deal, because in 2023, we weren't good without Kawhi. We weren't good. It was a struggle. And then you never knew when Paul George was going to play. That's another thing about James Harden. He's so durable and reliable in terms of playing games. It's not the same as having Paul George and Kawhi. And when you look at Kawhi in 2023, he played 52 games. And in those games that he played, we were 33-19. See how big of a difference? Then when he didn't play, 11. Oh my goodness. 11-19 when he didn't play. Well under 500. Let's compare that to 2024. Now, this is the first year we got James Harden. With Kawhi, 44-24. Without Kawhi, let's see, 44-24. Without Kawhi, 7-7. Straight 500. Then, of course, last year, with Kawhi, let's see. He played in 37 games last year. So with Kawhi, we were 26-11. My goodness, the guy just helps you win games, doesn't he? And then without him, obviously, there's a lot more games. It would be 23-21. Yeah, 23. No. Mental math here, guys. No, sorry, 24-21. 26 wins with him, yeah. 24-21. So, over 500 now, but still not great. We've never been more equipped, in my opinion, than this year. We've never been more equipped than this year without Kawhi Leonard to be very good without him. And coming up, going to be talking about the last piece of why I believe it's going to be less of a problem this year than any other season. I got to tell you a little something about Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. I was just clueless about where my finances were at, what I was getting charged for, because, obviously I've been through a lot. My house burned down. There's so many things I'm worried about. And then I downloaded Monarch Money and used the code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50% off my first year. And it started to show me what I'm getting charged for per month. I realized that I was paying for the YMCA this entire time and I wasn't going, so I got to start hitting the gym more. And I was able to cancel my Apple TV subscription that I didn't even know I was getting charged for every month. So I finally today got a notification that my Apple TV charge is going to come to an end and I'm not going to be getting charged $10 a month. Thank you, Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right. So, the last piece of why I think we're going to be more equipped to win and be good in games that Kawhi Leonard doesn't play is the experience that this team has and got last season playing without him for the majority of the season. Now, I don't think that was necessarily a good thing for the long haul, but we had 45 games to play without Kawhi last year, and we won 24 of those 45. We have more depth. We know what to do. You lean into the Zubac Harden pick and roll. You lean into more Zoo post-ups. You can let Bradley Beal try to create his own shot more. You let Bradley Beal get some more pick and roll reps. You might have to give Chris Paul more minutes. You don't need to just work James Harden to death. We have Chris Paul. Now, I still am skeptical of Chris Paul and James Harden on the floor together in 2026. I am a little skeptical because it's so stagnant. They are both doing a lot of the same things where they're both great in pick and roll, but they're not moving much without the ball, not very willing catch and shoot three ball guys. But I still think they're going to get some minutes together, and it won't be too bad. Defensively, I'm a little bit worried because this Chris Paul defensively is not the same as the one we saw in Houston, which a lot of people are going to say, well, and please don't say that. Dude, are you forgetting that these two almost won a championship together in Houston? Yeah, 7 years ago. It's the same thing you guys said about James Harden and Russell Westbrook playing together, and I told you it's not that Russell Westbrook anymore or that James Harden, and they were awful together, in my opinion, besides those occasional lobs that Russell Westbrook would dive baseline and Harden would throw it to him. So the main thing is our experience playing without Kawhi already. That's what is, for me, the biggest difference. Because we've changed the team. It's not like this is the same team we had in 2023. Really only Ivica Zubac left over, and of course our coach. But last year, that was the big thing. We had the point of attack defense with Chris Dunn, Nico Batum, and Derrick Jones to keep us in games, when our offense wasn't great. And I think our offense just got better. We just got to still lean into the defense, still have that defensive identity, in my opinion, to be, to not lose what made us great. I don't want to be just like an all-offense team that doesn't really guard like that. And I don't think that's going to happen under Jeff Van Gundy's watch. But if we go too offense-heavy personnel-wise and not enough Chris Dunn, Derrick Jones, Nico, then I think we're going to not be as great of a defense as we were before. And then everyone's going to be like, Bradley Beal made this team worse, and John Collins, they didn't help. But a lot of it's going to be on Ty Lue and managing lineups and what kind of prioritization he has of offense and defense and how he balances all that out. That is where the coaching staff has to come in. So, yeah, I think experience-wise, we are better off. We have way more depth. And the Zubac-Harden pick-and-roll combination is just only going to get stronger now in year 3 together. And it really all begins with Harden for me when it comes to the games without Kawhi and what he's able to still do. That is the biggest case for getting Harden is, everybody was like, well, when Kawhi and Paul George gets hurt, let's have a guy that can get you those wins and carry the load throughout regular seasons. And he is one of the best at that. So, I hope Kawhi Leonard plays 60 games. I don't expect 65 for the awards or anything like that, and I don't think the Clippers are going to care about that at all. Kawhi's already had enough individual accolades. I think, he wants to. He did finish the series last year, but we want to get another chance to win a series. We haven't won a series in 4 years. Well, it's going to be 5 years if we win one in 2026. It's been since 2021. We haven't won a series. So I think this team is the best team we've had since 2021 without a doubt. To end this episode, let's kind of look at that real quick. 2021 starting lineup. We had Patrick Beverley, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Marcus Morris, and Ivica Zubac. I'm just going to double check that starting lineup because I believe that's what it was. Because we played the Lakers on opening night and beat them, and that was really nice to get a little bit of revenge for the fact that, they won the championship, and we were, had to hear all the jokes, getting a 3-1, blowing a 3-1 lead. But yeah, we won 116-109, and our starting, Batum started. But then throughout the season, we replaced him in the starting lineup. So let's just say, and Ivica was starting in the beginning, but then Zoo replaced him. So let's just go with this. Zoo, Bev, Paul, Kawhi, and Morris versus Harden, this Kawhi, which is an older version, not as good, 5 years older. John Collins, who I would take over Marcus Morris, even though that's that Marcus Morris, the good one. But I would still probably take John Collins overall. This Zubac is definitely better than that Zubac. And then Beal and Paul George, 2021 Paul George, that's not a conversation. Definitely 2021 Paul George. And then, yeah, that's it. Oof, that's tough. Oh, man, that is really tough. Harden, Beal, Kawhi, Colin, Zoo versus Bev, PG, Kawhi, Morris, Zoo. I like that we have Pat Bev as a point of attack guy in that 2021 lineup. I think it's stronger defensively. But so I'm probably gonna have to go with that one by a smidge, even though this one has more offensive firepower with Beal. Then off the bench, we had Reggie Jackson, Terrence Mann, Lou, Luke Kennard, and Ibaka. I think this bench is definitely better than that. With the Chris Dunn, Derek Jones. It's tough. I mean, I think this is our best roster since then. I just think that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard were closer to their prime, so that's why we had more of belief with that team to win it all. But it's the best team we've had since then, and I think it's one of the best teams on paper in the history of the Clippers. So we'll be equipped for anything. What about the games without James Harden? Maybe that's an episode topic for another time this week. But you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more NBA content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on the road to get us to 8,000 before the season. And, of course, you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. The age-old proverb continues, go Clippers.